3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff at Brew. I am back. It's Kyle. I know I've been out for months. I appreciate Jackson and Jack carrying the majority of the work while I was out. Part of it was summer vacation. Part of it I was in Europe. And part of it was I didn't watch Summer League. So I'm not going to act like I'm going to put in any valuable input. But we are back. We're going to continue our season preview series, and it's going to be a Madison focus episode because all three of us are based in Madison, Wisconsin right now. So they are newer to the Brew Hoop site. Granted, you've heard one of them in a couple episodes prior, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves, talk about, you know, how they got into the Bucks and everything. So first, we will start with someone who you have heard before. Finn, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Finn Kuehl. Yeah, like Kyle said, you've heard me before on a couple episodes with Jack. I'm a sophomore at UW-Madison, journalism major. I've been a Bucks fan since about 2017, which is when I really started getting into basketball as a whole. Some of my favorite players that have played for the Bucks include, well, obviously Giannis, but I'm a big Jordan Nwora guy. I will always ride for Jordan Nwora. That's my dude. 2022 Wes Matthews is up there too. So total sicko for the Bucks and the NBA as a whole. Love to write. So yeah, happy to be here.
You are the only person, I think, in the history of the world that will ever say Jordan Nwora as one of their favorite players. I don't think there's going to be anyone else.
Well, I'm happy to have that title. Actually, I got a Nwora jersey in my room right now.
I say this as someone that was all in on AJ Green before he got – that was like a from day one AJ Green stand. So I get it. And we will have Drew go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Drew Gentile. I'm a year ahead of Finn, so I'm a junior, but I'm also at UW-Madison studying journalism and a certificate in sports communication. I guess my Bucks fandom started, I kind of had a couple different sides pulling on me for NBA fandom when I was really starting to get into it. I have some East Coast family, so they're Celtics fans. And then my dad has always been a Bucks guy, but he kind of grew up with those East Coast ties as well. So it's not like the hatred for the Celtics like a lot of Bucks fans would have, I guess. But when I really started getting into the NBA was kind of when Isaiah Thomas was kind of going crazy for the Celtics, and the Bucks were Giannis was starting to ascend to that really high level. I guess my favorite Buck of all time, I'll have to say, is Drew Holiday. I've always been a big Drew Holiday guy, and if you ask any of my friends from back home, just because my name is Drew, we all just thought the Drew Holiday spelling was way cooler. So that's how my friends have always spelled my name. So the fact that he kind of got traded to the Bucks and would kind of help them get over the top, that was always really funny to me. So that's kind of feel obligated to say he's my favorite Buck of all time, but. Favorite Bucks memory, I guess I went to, forget the year already. I think somewhere in like 14, 15, whenever Jared Bayless hit the game with the wide open layup on like a backdoor cut buzzer beater in a playoff game. That was it was my second Bucks game, but the first one I actually remember, and it was a playoff buzzer beater by just a niche role player. So that was awesome. And that's still number one in my memory of favorite moments for a Bucks game, I guess.
That is a good one. And yeah, that was the 14-15. I had so much hope after that. I was like, oh, they're going to come back. And then game 7 happened, or game 6 happened, and it went downhill. But so as previous listeners know, we are doing our season preview series going into the year. So we're going to go through a couple topics that are not limited to, but also include the starting lineup, playoff lineups, Myles Turner, what's going to happen with Giannis, if the Bucks will have a leap from a player or not, between three players, I should say, because Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., AJ Green, and I guess Kyle Kuzma, who's the most important. I hope that by the time this gets out, he's traded. Probably won't happen. And along with talk about the Bucks' strengths and weaknesses and what they need to do to get a title. So I guess we'll just start right off the bat with the opening night starting lineup. Who do we think is going to be in the starting lineup? I'll let Drew go first and try and predict that.
I'll go a little bit of a prediction, just kind of what I want to see as well. Obviously, I love the Myles Turner signing. I've been a big believer that that's like kind of the perfect fit next to Giannis, and obviously he'll start alongside Giannis in the front court. But kind of what I'd like to see the Bucks do with the rest of the lineup is just kind of get who you feel are kind of your best supporting role players out there. So I think AJ Green, I'd love for him to start just because knockdown shooting alongside Giannis, and he's shown a lot when he's gotten the chance. I would start Gary Trent too on the wing, and they might be a little bit smaller on the wing spot there, but just again getting your 3-and-D out there to play alongside Giannis. And then I would still start Kevin Porter Jr. at the point guard spot. I know Ryan Rollins is probably going to make a case for that as well, but at this point, just go with a little bit more proven in Kevin Porter Jr. And I think in terms of what you see in October, that's probably not what you're going to see in April and May and whatnot. But for now, I would just go with the guys and have had success in those spots. And I don't want to see Kuzma start. That's my number one thing. So it would be a little bit of a smaller starting lineup, but I think you've got Myles Turner, who's going to be playing the 5 and guarding the 5, so you're going to get Giannis roaming a lot more on defense. So even if you're a little bit small on the perimeter, you've got a really strong and big back line behind that defense. So I'd like to see him go a little bit smaller, just get the shooting out there and kind of let Giannis do his thing, and then have a little bit more creation off the bench for the non-Giannis minutes.
Okay. And what about you, Finn? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm generally on the same page as Drew here. I think if I was trying to predict the lineup for like opening night, first few months, definitely KPJ and Gary. Now that we have both of those guys back, I think it's clear that they're going to play some big roles. We're going to need KPJ as a creator a lot, I think, because outside of Giannis, he's got to. I mean, I think he's the best guy, like in terms of playmaking, scoring off the dribble. That's not ideal, but like that's just where we're at. So I'd roll with him, Gary, and then Myles and Giannis, obviously. And then for the 3, I think it will be Kuz or Prince. However, if I had to pick what I would do, I'm starting to think about it. If he makes the team, I think I might start Amir Coffey. And I mean, maybe that's just me trying to like be a little different, switch things up. But like, I like what Prince can do, but I don't like him as a starter anymore. I think he could just be like a 10, 15-minute guy off the bench. And I think that Kuzma like eventually could be the starter, but I think he could be helpful off the bench too, especially if he can kind of ramp his play back up a little bit, because we'll need some more like scoring, creation, size off the bench. So Coffey's a guy who can space the floor, defend about as well as Prince, but also put the ball on the floor, get to the rim, hit middies. Like he's just like a more versatile Prince. So like if we're leading towards starting Prince, I'd rather go Coffey, but I don't think that will happen.
I'm curious what Doc's going to do with that 3 position, because it feels like the point guard will either be KPJ or Rollins. Like that's easy for a toss-up. I feel as though with the 2, that's where it'll depend, because I mean last year Doc went to a stretch where it was just Kuzma at the 3, Taurean Prince at the 2. And that was not a good plan. It didn't work. He had to scrap it halfway through the postseason. But I could see the intrigue of Amir Coffey if he makes the squad and taking that 3 spot. I also wonder, does one of Gary Trent, I feel like does Doc want to take Gary Trent Jr. out from that 6-man role that he excelled in after his demotion? Does he give Andre Jackson Jr. one final chance just to see like, all right, we got to see, do we really want him? I feel as though what Doc does with the 3 will kind of determine what he does with the 2 as well. So I personally would not want to see Kyle Kuzma at the 3, but I also don't want to see Taurean Prince at the 2. So it is kind of that toss-up. But is there anyone, I know you mentioned Amir Coffey, Drew, do you think there's kind of like someone that is on the outskirts of like an out of left field person that could take that 3 or even 2 spot?
I don't know. Like Finn said, I think Amir Coffey is an intriguing option. I just think gives you a little bit of something different on the wing spot, and it gives you a little bit more of the size as opposed to playing small or playing really big with like Prince at the 2, like you mentioned. I think it's hard to see something coming out of left field just with Doc. I think he gets pretty set in his ways, and I think like we could see Kuzma start, and this whole conversation just kind of goes. But if I had to guess, I would guess Kuzma or Prince at the 3, and I would hope they go a little bit more traditional at the 2 size wise and not try to make one of the 3s play out of position at the 2, because that obviously didn't work. So if I had to guess, it would be Kuzma. But like, I'm kind of with Finn. I do think it'd be kind of fun to see Coffee start, just because I think we've already kind of seen enough of Kuzma. We kind of know what he is, and maybe he finds himself off the bench, and by midpoint of the year, getting towards the end of the year, we feel like he should be starting again. I doubt it, but it could happen. But I don't really see it coming out of left field. But if it is something kind of unexpected, I would probably guess Coffee. I don't know. I'm not sold on Andre Jackson at all. So maybe Doc is wanting to give him one more chance, and that could be something we see. But I would guess it's probably something pretty expected and not anything too out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with how many players return. It's like, even though it feels like a whole different team, just because you lose Brook Lopez, but you get Myles Turner, and now you don't have Dame. At the same time, everyone else seems to was on the team last year. So I do wonder about that. In terms of the playoff closing lineup, I feel like that one is going to be both easier but more difficult to predict, just because we know Myles Turner will be there and we know Giannis will be there. And then everything else is kind of a big question mark. So, Finn, what about you? If you had to go with your closing lineup, what would you want to do, and what do you think Doc will do?
Okay, so in terms of like what I would want to do / an ideal world, I think that we'd be running with KPJ at the point still, hoping that he can be a little more efficient in his decision making and scoring. Just because he has a little more size, I trust him more on defense than like a Cole Anthony. And we've seen him hit clutch shots in his career, so I'd like him there. As for the 2, probably just the hot hand between Gary and AJ Green. Whoever's hitting shots, I trust them both about equally on defense. AJ a little more, but just the hot hand there. And I think in an ideal world, we'd have a revitalized Kuzma at the 3 for just some like a jumbo forward, some size on the wing with a little bit of versatility, can sometimes make some shots. Like, in an ideal world, this guy should come out looking a little better, playing like maybe our 4th best player or something, and we can talk about him a little more later with the other questions. But so I think like hopefully we'd have a better version of Kuzma closing. As for what I think Doc will do, I feel like we might see Prince there. Otherwise, like pretty similar to what I said. I mean, Doc just seems to love Prince, and I won't have my hopes up for him just not being in the rotation. But
that's fair. What about you, Drew?
Yeah, Finn kind of read my mind. I know I mentioned is like what I'd want to see is the starting lineup with the 3 guard look, just because I think it'd be kind of fun and just get your shooters out there. But I think in a playoff series, for the most part, assuming the team you're playing has a wing that is going to go score and they're going to use him for offense in crunch time, you're not going to want to line up with AJ and Gary on the wings. So I would go Kevin Porter Jr. for sure. Just you need that creation. Obviously, a lot of the offense is going to go through Giannis, and it's probably not going to be as much pick and roll with Giannis and a point guard as it would have been with Dame and Giannis, but you still want some of that creation out there. And then, like Finn said, Gary or AJ, just whoever's got the hot hand. I mean, that could be either of them. We've seen both of them get really hot at times, and some nights they might both be really hot, but you might have to just sit one of them down even on a good night just for defensive reasons. And then, like Finn said, I could totally see it being Prince just to get that 3-and-D to try to close playoff games and get stops. But in an ideal world, especially with Dame gone, like there's more shots to go around. Maybe Kuzma finds a little bit of a rhythm here, and then in a playoff series, you can have that big body on the wing that can score the ball and get you buckets, not give a ton up on defense, and you don't need him to be a go-to scorer, but just have him out there as an option. If I had to make a prediction, I would say it's just either going to be Prince or Kuzma. I don't really see Doc doing anything too crazy. So just like Finn, I'm in the category of hoping that it's a revitalizing season for Kuzma. But yeah, it could be either one of them, but my hope is that it's Kuzma because I think he has a higher ceiling if he's playing well.
That's fair. I am surprised. The last time we had Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green as the closing lineup, it ended disastrously, but they were the reason why it was even close. But it's curious. I figured, I don't know. Do you think Bobby has a chance at making a closing lineup, because my mind says that is a jumbo lineup and Bobby is defensively a liability. But at the same time, the offensive, I don't know. Like, what about Bobby? Like, I feel like he's the one where we're kind of all just like, he came back. I don't think he's going to start, but also we don't know what his role is going to be, but it feels like he might be one of those closers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't like forget about Bobby. Like when we're talking about like the forwards, like I'm thinking about all the other guys. I think like in the playoffs this past year, what I saw from Bobby was an encouraging amount of effort on defense that I haven't like always seen from him. And it has me feeling a little more positively about him heading into the season, just in terms of like his overall ability to contribute in postseason basketball. So I think it'll totally be like a matchup dependent thing. But like if we were to play the Cavs, maybe Detroit, and we're going up against a team with a bigger front court, I think that that's like a reasonable option, especially if Kuzma is just like not it. Because I think the main takeaway here is that our small forward room still kind of sucks. And so like if we need to just go jumbo ball, that's starting to become more trendy in the NBA. So it's definitely an option. I guess it would just depend on the matchup.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, just with that matchup. Because like against Indiana, that was not going to work. It got to the point where Doc had no choice, but it wasn't going to work against the Pacers. It's not going to work against the Knicks, for example, where there is that ability of a point guard being able to break down the play and then just kick it out. But I could see against the Cavs it being more a higher option, or even the Sixers well, maybe not the Sixers because they're not making the playoffs. So disregard that. It's fine. It's fine. But I think what the biggest thing is, what hinges on the team's success is Myles Turner. Like Milwaukee was able to make this home run move to bring him in. He's going to be that second guy after Giannis. But in terms of how they're going to play with him, is he going to fill in more of the Brook Lopez world, where it's going to be like pick and pop? Is he's going to be relied on more ISO? Is it going to be more just high post? I don't know, Drew. What should we expect out of Myles Turner? What his fit is going to be, and how the team gels with him?
I obviously I do think there's a lot of similarities between Myles Turner and Brook, just in terms of how they play. Obviously, Brook was doing it at a much lower level just because he being a 7-footer in the NBA and how fast people are playing and all the ball screens, it's not sustainable to be playing for an insanely long time. And Brook is just reaching the end of a really good career. But I think that's the nice thing about Myles Turner is in terms of the fit next to Giannis, because obviously Giannis is kind of just an outlier in terms of play style in the NBA. But he's still going to offer some of the just the 3-and-D is the big thing, but just being much more of an athlete on the perimeter at this point than Brook is. Not to say he's the best athlete in the entire NBA, but at the 5 spot, he is pretty darn good, and you can trust him a little bit more, I think, than Brook. And I don't think you'll have to rely on Giannis so much for helping as a big on the perimeter. And I think that's really going to be beneficial to Giannis, because you can see him get back in a little bit more of just a roaming off the ball role, because I think he can be the best defender in the league if he's in that role where he's just helping, stepping into lanes, blocking shots, guarding on the perimeter a little bit. But offensively from Myles Turner, obviously the pick and pops I think are going to be big, just setting good screens and generating the pick and pop looks, especially with a little bit less experience in terms of creation on the roster. Playing a little bit of back to the basket maybe, but I think you're going to see more. You're probably not going to want to have him sitting down there when you have Giannis. You're probably going to want him more spacing the floor to give Giannis more room to work. But kind of just, if you watch a Pacers game, obviously you want to watch one of the Pacers games where he plays well, but just being able to score as a back to the basket big a little bit is nice. But it's mainly for me just super excited about the pick and pops and just having what I feel like. I always thought Brook was a good fit next to Giannis too. It was just he was getting really old, and I think they basically got a very similar fit, but he's just much younger and more athletic at this point. So I think obviously there's going to be a lot more shots to go around without Dame, so maybe Myles Turner takes more shots than he's used to taking just because there's more opportunity here, but I don't really think he needs to change how he plays too much. I think the 3-and-D and pick and pops and occasional back to the basket scoring, I think, is exactly kind of what we need out of him.
Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Finn?
Yeah, I mean, I think Drew's got it right that we don't really need to change a ton, especially offensively, transitioning from Brook to Myles. All the shooting stuff holds true, and like Brook, as old and slow as he was, could lumber his way to the rim and attack a closeout. Like really, that was something that impressed me from him, and I think Turner can do a bit of the same. So you're just getting a nice pick and pop, pick and roll threat, and I think that transition gives us the opportunity to play a lot more of like 5-out point Giannis ball, kind of like what we saw towards the end of last season without Dame. Just like the overall lineup, we've got shooters at every position. And so I want to see a lot of like Giannis pick and roll ball handler, like inverted ball screens. Maybe that's just from Turner, or we see like Gary Trent Jr. doing like ghost screen stuff, guard screens, whatever. Like I want to see Giannis with the ball in his hands a lot, making plays with all these shooters around him. And as for the defensive end, I just want the team to be more adaptable than they have been in past years. Like you still have the drop coverage going from Brook to Turner, and I think that's fine if that's still our primary thing. But in the playoffs against the Pacers, like when we were dropping against those Turner pick and pops, like that was just awful. That's not going to work. And so we saw Doc make the adjustment eventually, going to hedge with like Bobby or Jericho. And so I just want to see the team be more adaptable in their schemes, being able to switch based on the matchup. And I think Turner can get up to that level a little bit, hedge and recover, whatever that looks like. So I just want to see like an overall flexible, free flowing offense and defense with like versatility, shooting, and adaptability.
Yeah, you guys raised a good point in terms of him not having to change anything or to do anything drastic, which I do agree with. And I think that's going to be the good part of that. I think one of the things that Myles Turner did really well with Indiana, especially in that series, was more his off-ball movement, which obviously Brook can't do as well because he was 35, 36 years old, coming off back surgery and everything. So I'm curious in terms of like how they incorporate him with that, especially if he's on the court with Giannis. But then also, if it's him that's like the main guy, are they going to like have the offense flow through him, whether it is like the pick and pop or whether they do have him go down low or even just kind of being a backside cutter and in transition? It is interesting to see how it all fits in. And I really hope that Doc can find a way to like utilize him more in a high post situation, just because I think he can thrive from there, whether it's more he gets the ball in the high post and is able to just pop a shot right there, or maybe there's a cutter, or just ideally Doc would find some off-ball action for like a Gary Trent or AJ Green or even Kevin Porter Jr. So I think that would also be little pockets of that. But I do think Myles Turner will be able to fit in well with Milwaukee just because, like you guys said, of his play style and how it was relatively similar to Brook. But the only thing I'm wondering is how him and Giannis are going to coexist just with that, not necessarily spacing issue, but both, like Giannis is going to take a lot of shots, but is Myles Turner willing to be that second guy to take all the shots as well?
Right. I think the interesting thing about Turner on this team right now is that he is our like second best player and second best offensive player. And that's not a role we've seen him in. And so, like you mentioned, the high post stuff, we're going to be looking to see like what more can he do to expand his game and really be like a second option, because he's not a creator and he hasn't shown like a ton of passing stuff. So like maybe that is more off ball movement, or maybe they tried to get him to tap into some like high post hub stuff like you mentioned. But like we're going to need to find a way to feature him because he is our second best offensive player. And so, well, like all the pick and pop stuff, pick and roll stuff, like we know that it's there for him. There might have to be more, or it's just like spamming that stuff, but then that's easier to guard. But I think in getting him and like making the move that we did to get him and cutting Dame, like we're really showing a lot of belief in him. And so I'll be interested to see like what this team thinks that they can get out of him. That's more than what we've just seen with Indiana when he was like the third, fourth option.
Yeah. And I think same thing. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, just like we're all curious to see what Doc does, especially the three position. I'm really curious to see what Doc does just like offensively with this team, because obviously Dame and Giannis have had their fair share of injuries and they've been kind of in and out over the past couple of years. But generally speaking, he's had kind of two like all-world guys where it's like obviously we've seen a lot of flaws with how they've, but at points, it's still like you've still got two all NBA level guys where you can just give the ball to them in space and let them go, or have them run a pick and roll and play a 2-man game, and you don't really have to do much. It's just let them read the game. I think now you've got your second best player is a guy who's getting elevated into like a second option role that he's never really been in his career, but I think he's got the tools to succeed in that role. But then you've also got a lot of young guys, and you've got Kuzma, who's been struggling. You're going to need to get more out of these guys than they've ever had to be asked for before, or you're going to need Kuzma to start playing like he's played in the past. So I do think it's interesting, not just with who Doc puts out on the court, but what he's able to get out of these guys. And I think he's probably going to have to run a fair amount of new offensive wrinkles to maximize this team, because it's built well around Giannis, I think, just in terms of skill sets. But there's definitely a gaping hole from losing a guy that can be a top tier second option and trying to fill that void.
Yeah, it is weird though, because thinking of like Myles Turner, because it's like, yeah, can he get just to being, the second best player? And it's like, I'm trying to think, was there ever a stretch where Myles Turner was the best player on the Pacers? And I think there might have been that short window where it was like after they traded Paul George, but before Tyrese Halliburton really stepped up. And even then it was kind of like, yeah, he was a solid player, but it was never like this is the bona fide guy. This is going to be a guy where it makes sense that you would build a team around him. So what he's able to do in that step up is definitely one of the things that'll stick out to me. And thankfully the Bucks do have a guy that you can build around, because we have been doing it for the last 10 years now. Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's funny because when it was like think of stats and like trying to figure out why don't we predict Giannis' stats, it's like, well, how the hell are we supposed to do that? Because it's Giannis. Like at this point, what is there to predict? Last year he had 30.4 points per game. He had 11.9 rebounds and 6.5 assists. He shot 60% all over the field. We're not going to talk about his 3-point percentage or his free throws or anything like that. Definitely his highest year in terms of usage, in terms of scoring. But I don't know. How are we supposed to? I guess we're going to predict. We're going to try and do it. So whoever wants to take the first crack at it, go for it. It's interesting though, because Giannis had the same points per game this previous season as he did the year before at 30.4. And since that 22-23 season, he's always averaged above 30.
I can go first. So I'm not predicting anything like too different than what he's been doing the last couple of years. I mean, you set a standard of consistency, but that it's a standard of excellence. So I don't want to like minimize it, but like 32 points per game, 12 rebounds, 7 assists is like about what he's done the last couple of years. Couple more points a game, which I think will just come with no Dame, no Chris, anything. Like he'll just be getting a couple extra shots, but I think we'll just see a pretty similar season to last year overall, because it'd be tough for him to top that. And then 2.5 stocks as well, probably about a block and a steal. That's what he does. And then as for the usage rate, in 2023, he led the league at about 38.8%, I believe. So I think we'll see him hovering around like that 39%, maybe even 40, just like near the top of the league in usage, because I really think when he's on the court, he's going to be running everything. And that's at least what I hope to see. Like I want to see point Giannis, him touching the ball in every possession, being like a jumbo point guard. So I think the usage will be pretty high, as will the dominance.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Finn. I think the main thing, I think the usage rate is going to be up again. I know it 22, 23 was when it was really high. Then it just dipped a little bit just because he got that another co-star in Dame who they were playing through at times as well. I think it'll go back up to there, right? Somewhere between like that 38 and 40 range, I think is reasonable, because I think like there are some creators on the Bucks, but there's not a Chris Middleton, there's not a Dame, there's like it's going to be a lot of Giannis when he's on the court, and I think that's what I want to see them do. So I think that somewhere between 38 and 40. So then with that, I guess it's kind of hard to predict the numbers, like we said, because he's been pretty consistently around these, hover around these. I guess I'll say he adds a point or two, so it's somewhere between 31 and 32 a game. Maybe a little bit of an increase in assists, just because I think like his co-stars in the past have been like more self-creation, and now I think he's going to be kind of a lot of the jumps we see from other guys as creators, I think will be playing like with Giannis in like a type potential 2-man game. So maybe I'd bet on his assists going up rather than going down. I don't know exactly how much that'll go up by. I'll have to see him a little bit. And then if I had to pick one stat that I might see decrease just because I'll pick one just because there's a chance everything goes up, honestly, but maybe the rebounds go down a little bit just because you've got another big body back there like Brook, but he's just a much more young and athletic center. So maybe Myles Turner steals a rebound or two from Giannis's average. But in general, I think the usage rate, points, assists definitely go up.
Yeah, I think that's fair on all those. I wonder, the one stat to me that I'm curious about is if his blocks will increase, just because hopefully he's going to be able to do more of that free roaming, kind of be more of a high-end help side defender. He hasn't really had a chance to do that in the past couple of years, just given the personnel that the Bucks had. But I feel like with this year, it might be a little bit better. So I do wonder if he's going to get that chance to increase his number of blocks per game. I am not going to necessarily guarantee he will, but I could see that being the stat that increases. That his ability to box out to let others grab the rebound. While with Myles Turner, I don't know if he's going to be as adept at it. He might not be able to box out as well, or he's just going to be able to grab the rebounds himself. So definitely two areas that I think of. But again, we know Giannis is going to be all NBA, up there in the top 3 or 5 for MVP. Going to score a lot of points. It's going to be fun. But we're going to look at the rest of the roster and figure out, we've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen with AJ Green, we thought we saw it with Ajax, we kind of got it with Ryan Rollins last year, players that have been able to make a leap. And whether, with Ryan Rollins' case, it was this guy that was just on a two-way to firm rotation player, AJ Green from two-way player to potential starter. Is there anyone on this team that is going to be able to go from whether it's two-way to rotation to starter, or starter to a star, or Kyle Kuzma to, I guess we'll settle with it, Kyle Kuzma? So I will let Drew go first to see which Buck is going to take that leap.
The first one, I'll just say it quick. We've talked about it enough, but yeah, I think a Kyle Kuzma, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a leap, but like you said, the crap Kyle Kuzma to the serviceable Kyle Kuzma, he's definitely.
That's a leap. That is a leap.
Yeah, it is a leap from last year. I think we've seen him play at a much higher level in the past than he did last year for sure. So it's not like it'd be a leap to something we've never seen before. We just need him to get back a higher level than he was playing at last year. The other one for me, I think Ryan Rollins is another one to look at, just because, he got thrown into the fire a little. He was obviously a two-way guy, and he got thrown into the fire a little bit with Dame's injuries, and then Kevin Porter came and kind of took a little bit off of him. I think just made it a little bit less of a high necessity role for him. So I think, but I think we all kind of said we think Kevin Porter Jr. will start, and I think honestly I like that for Ryan Rollins, because I think he just gets to come off the bench, a little bit more creation opportunity off the bench, and kind of. I think it's easier to find your footing in the NBA playing in a backup role. It's not like he's started in the starting 5 for a team that's wanting to be really good, and it's you need to do this, and this next to Giannis if we're going to reach our ceiling as a team. And not to say that Kevin Porter Jr. is not going to be a solid point guard for us, but I do think it's not like he's got that point guard spot where it's nobody is going to take it from him. He's it's kind of wide open. I feel basically I think the 1 through the 3 spots are all kind of wide open. So Ryan Rollins, I think he'll get a bench role to start, and I think he's just going to be much more comfortable where he's not trying to fill the Dame void. He's trying to find his own role as opposed to filling in for someone else. So I think there could be another leap there, and he could maybe go from a rotational guy to a starter by the end of the year. If not, just get even better as a rotational guy.
Do you agree with that, Finn?
Yeah, tough not to believe in Ryan Rollins after all we've seen. So, and I know Jack Jackson and Morgan talked about him too. So I will talk a bit about Kuzma because I also had him. I'm willing to give him a lot more credit, I think, than most Bucks fans are at this point. I know the bar is through the floor, but really in his career, we've seen this guy be a pretty solid NBA player. You don't average 20 points per game multiple times on accident, and that is not what I expect from him on this Bucks team. But I think just in theory, And in practice too, like the guy is talented and has a versatile skill set when it comes to his scoring, shooting, driving, passing, defending, rebounding. Like he does a little bit of everything, and it's not great, but we've seen him be pretty solid. And so I think, I mean, like I don't want to like
He
throw
does all
away
these things at a shit level, but he does all these things.
right. Well, like what I like to say about him is just like I feel like his mind just runs like a mile a minute, and it's just like a mental thing, and he needs to like calm down, focus on doing some of the little things, like starting with his like ancillary stuff, like his complementary stuff, just like the passing, the rebounding, trying to hold his weight on defense. Like just start there, then let the pull up jumpers come after that, I guess, once you're feeling confident. But I do think that he will be better this season simply because, like I said, the bar is through the floor. But I think that he could be an important contributor for this team. And then the other guy, just because I want to talk quick about Pete Nance. If we want to talk about like a two-way guy who could make another leap, I know the front court is stacked, but I left summer league feeling really impressed with Nance, and his ability to just like be on an NBA floor for probably like 10 minutes a game. He can shoot, he can rebound, he can block shots, he can pass. Like he's just like a versatile big man who knows his role. And so I think if we see injuries to guys like Bobby, Turner, or if like Jericho Sims isn't being who we think that he could be, Pete Nance could be a guy who plays some. So I like him as a potential two-way success story.
I could see that. I feel like out of the two ways, it's either him or Mark Sears are like the two likely ones that are going to be able to like get somewhere. Not to say that Bouye can't. I feel as though I agree. Like leaving Summer League and the glimpse I watch, Nance seemed to have more of that. Plus, it never hurts to have size, and that's just my one concern with Sears is like and Bouye is like they're very small people, so it's like it's hard to really translate that into NBA level success. There is also like the odd part of what about like the young players on the Bucks? Like obviously there's Tyler Smith. Like, is he going to be able to do it? I mean, Cole Anthony is still relatively young if you actually look at his age and stuff. It doesn't feel like it, but I think some people would say Chris Livingston has that chance or Jericho Sims, but I wonder, do you think there's any of these out of that group, whether it is like the Tyler Smith or Chris Livingston and Cole Anthony, Jericho Sims, like any of them you think could have that ability to do it now that they've, at least in the case of Livingston, Sims, and Smith, they had a year with this team?
I guess if I had to pick from those guys, I guess maybe Chris Livingston. I mean, he had gotten waived and then kind of signed him back to a standard contract, which I think came as a little bit of a surprise for everyone. And I guess I would go him just for no other reason than the fact that he's like a 6'6" wing, and that's kind of a spot we've talked about on even just on here today that's a weakness, and someone's got to step up there. I don't think it's more likely that he steps up than it is for maybe Kuzma to just find his footing a little bit, but I guess he would probably have the most opportunity. I know Tyler Smith is going to play one of the big spots most likely unless they run him as a really big three, but obviously those spots are a little bit more solidified with Giannis, Bobby, and Turner. So I would say just in terms of how the roster is constructed, the door is most open for Chris Livingston, but it's not something I'm super confident saying that, hey, Chris Livingston is going to be in the rotation by April or whatever.
Yeah, and then talking about those other guys, I don't necessarily see big leaps in the forecast for Jericho Sims or Cole Anthony, but I do think that they could be pretty important pieces for this team. I mean, Jericho Sims like is one of he might be like the third best defender on this team right now. He's athletic, he can block shots, and he can really like move his feet, move his puppies for a big man. So like I'm impressed with him, and I think that even if he just plays like 15 minutes a game because he's got to share with Giannis, Bobby, Turner, like his stats might not pop and like there might not be a huge leap, but I think he can contribute, and I think he's a guy that can play in the playoffs next year. And then as for Cole Anthony, it'll be interesting to see how things play out in that backcourt rotation between him and like Ryan Rollins, KPJ, and how many minutes he can sneak his way into. But in his career, we've seen him be a pretty big time contributor at times. Like when guys have gone down with injury, he can go for a big scoring night. He can create. He's a microwave. So I think that there's a place for him on this team. And overall, I just feel really happy to have like multiple younger players on this team who are like actually decent because it's just been a while. And like, I love Jordan Wara, like I mentioned, but like believing in him was not as fruitful ultimately as like believing in AJ Green or Ryan Rollins could be. And so it's just fun to have these guys who are like young, also decent, and can play and like still have some upside. So I think that's something to be excited about this season, no matter what.
Yeah, that is completely fair. And then we're gonna go to the postseason, and the Bucks' success in general. But we're gonna have you guys rank in order from most important to least important out of these 4 players. So we got Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., AJ Green, and Kyle Kuzma. In terms of that Bucks success, who has that level of importance? And I'll let whoever wants to jump in first, or if you guys need time to think about it. I can always throw mine in. I don't know if I'm going to have an episode for myself, so I can always throw mine in if needed.
Okay, I can start because I have my rankings ready. So
perfect.
number 1, I've got Kevin Porter Jr. And I think that because creation on this team is currently a weakness overall, especially outside of Giannis. And so I think with KPJ slated to be the starting point guard, like we all talked about, it's going to be important that he's able to stay on the court, be relatively consistent, and just make some stuff happen off the dribble. He can attack the rim. He can hit pull-up jumpers. He can play make, but also just be that microwave scorer. And so I think we're just going to need him at times, especially in lineups without Giannis, to be a guy who can push the pace and like get things going. Otherwise, the offense could bog down because we have a lot of good role players, but they're not all creators. And so kind of in that spirit, I do have Kuzma at number 2 just because, I've already talked about him a decent amount, but just like the upside for him to be a solid contributor is there. He plays a position of need, and he can be a bit more of a scorer than a guy like AJ Green or Gary Trent Jr. And so I think that if he like can bounce back, he will end up looking like a really important contributor for this team. So I kind of hope it happens. How much I believe in it, I don't know. And then Gary Trent and AJ Green is a bit of a toss-up, but I would say Gary at number 3. I think he has a little bit more like general scoring, high volume upside than AJ Green does. Like AJ Green is great in his specialist role, 3-and-D, and there's definitely room for him to get better, but maybe not like a ton better. But Gary Trent Jr., he could hit like 4 or 5 threes on any given night. He averaged like 18 points a couple times with the Raptors. So I think him like really being that steady high volume shooter will be important, especially for playing a more like just high volume 3-point offense.
Yeah, Finn kind of hit on a lot of what I would say. But I think you could do it in either order between Kevin Porter and Kyle Kuzma, just because I think those are the 2 with probably the highest ceilings in terms of being creators. Obviously, Kuzma we've been plenty frustrated with, but he's the position of need and he can be a little bit more of an individual creator. But I'll go Kevin Porter Jr. too in the 1 spot as well, just because he is a point guard. We're going to expect him to start, and I just think, especially in a playoff scenario, like, yes, it's going to go through Giannis a lot of times, but it can't be just a Giannis post up or a Giannis clear out every single possession. Like, you're going to need some variation. And at this point, I trust Kevin Porter Jr. a little bit more as that secondary creator. And especially in like pick and rolls with Giannis, I trust him more as a handler. So I'm going to say he's the most important, just because I think there's probably going to be more opportunities for him. And I think the opportunities that he has are going to be more important than Kuzma. But then 2, I would also go Kuzma, just because we've said like they need someone at the 3, and if it's going to be him, a lot of Bucks fans I don't think would bet on that right now, but he's got the physical, like he's a big guy. We've seen him score the ball well in the NBA before, and that is something that would really elevate this team, and that's something we need. And then same with me here with the toss up between Gary and AJ. They're both kind of role guys. You know what you're going to get. I would also agree that Gary's ceiling is a little bit higher, just a little bit more creation and a little bit more of the 3-and-D archetype. But it kind of is a toss because those are the 2 guys, like we said, that they're really good role players, but there's not a whole lot more to the game than that. Like AJ Green could totally have a really big three in the playoffs at some point where he shoots it 5 feet behind the line and blows the roof off the Fiserv. Like that's totally possible, but just because his ceiling's a little bit lower, I think as a creator and a defender, I'll go Trent at 3 and AJ Green at 4 as well. But I think obviously when we don't have that kind of the co-star next to Giannis, these guys are going to be super critical, and I think there could be leaps from a couple of them, and the bar's through the floor, like we said, for at least one of them. So it will be really interesting to see how they kind of play as, especially Kuzma for me, as he was brought here in a trade for Middleton, and I think that kind of put him under the impression like you just got traded for this guy that's like so important to this franchise, and he's like their bona fide number 3. He's just there to get buckets and be a playmaker and help facilitate the offense. And I think kind of being traded for a guy like that kind of puts him in that mindset that that's exactly what he needs to be for them. And I think it was just too, like, that's not his role, I don't think. But if he can find his footing again here as a little bit more of just a role guy as opposed to trying to be that third star, I think that would be important for this team.
Yeah, no, I definitely think like obviously being traded for Chris Middleton made a perception of Kuzma that not completely fair to him. I think there's also an element because I remember when I went, it was like a couple games after that trade, the Bucks were playing the Sixers and Kuzma was doing a great job defensively. I was like, okay, maybe there's something there. Like maybe there is this ability and something that he can be useful for. And I think that was kind of one of those things where it's going to be on the coaching staff also to be like, hey, you need to rein it in. Like you need to just really thrive in this particular role. Because I think if we're asking him to go out and get bucket, do what Bobby Portis, like we tell Bobby, go out, get baskets. I think that's not a completely fair thing to ask of Kuzma. But I think there's also times where maybe that's the expectation from him. And I don't know if that's going to happen. So I am curious to see like what the coaching staff does with that. Because I can also see why Kuzma could be so important. I will not have him that high, but I will save that for the future. But we can go forward, and I guess we're going to talk about the Bucks' strengths and their weaknesses. And I guess what are they at this point? I feel like in the past we kind of knew like this is a team that can shoot the ball, or this is a defensively stout team, and now it's we don't know what there are strengths, there are weaknesses, but I don't think it's as clear cut as it has been in past seasons. So, Finn, what do you think are the Bucks? We'll start with the strengths. What do you think is the Bucks' strength or the greatest strength this season? Besides having
first, I'm just going to quick say that I think it's funny that like every single Brew Hoop pod just turns into like a Kuzma discussion at this point.
It's going to be until this is just going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot to talk about with him. But yeah, so biggest strength, I would say it's probably just like the overall fit of this roster next to Giannis. I think that in terms of like the regular season, we really do have a better roster than a lot of people think, like especially like outsiders, because a lot of these role players are pretty solid and proven, and they all fit next to Giannis. Like, there's the opportunity for this team to look really awesome, especially on offense, but potentially defense too. Just because we got a bunch of shooters, a bunch of like versatile guys who just know their role and can play next to Giannis. So I think we've built. It's almost like a little bit Houston Rockets-esque next to James Harden. Well, you just got a bunch of guys who fit. So I love that. I think that's our biggest strength.
Yeah, I'm a lot in the same boat here. Like I really do think. I think people look at the roster and don't see like Myles Turner he's a big name, but I don't think people look at the roster and say, oh, Giannis has a co-star that like I don't think people think they can go out and win a ton, like go super deep in the playoffs because there's not a co-star. But I with Finn, like I do like totally love that the roster is like really constructed just around fitting around Giannis. I think a lot of times, just like in sports in general, teams just want to get big names, and because they think, oh yeah, if we get these two superstars, they'll figure it out together. And sometimes that doesn't work. And I think sometimes it's more beneficial to just go purely off fit around your number one guy. And I think that's kind of what they've done. And I think they could surprise some people, like the way they started like playing when Giannis started playing at that MVP level when in the early Bud days, and when they all of a sudden got really good and were the number one seed, just like. It felt like there was just a bunch of role guys knocking down threes and playing defense. Obviously, there was Middleton, but like there was kind of that co-star. But it was a lot of it. I always felt like was like wow, here's another guy checking in off the bench. He's not going to be terrible on defense. He's just going to catch and shoot and make every three because Giannis is going to drive and attract everyone. Like, I think that play style is something we could see a lot of this year. And I think Giannis, more so now than in recent years, has a chance to make these role guys elevate their games too. I think he's had the co-stars for for a while now that people are forgetting how much he can elevate the game of just a straight up role player. So I think that is the main strength. Obviously, that could also, we'll probably get to it as a concern, not having that co-star, but just the fact that who they have for role players, they have solid role players. They're not, I mean, some guys they're going to try to get more out of than maybe we know are capable of right now. But like, there's a lot more role players on this year's team than in years past that I feel confident, like, oh, this guy fits next to Giannis and he can go give us good minutes in an NBA game. So I think that is the biggest strength, just that they really have a good fit of players around their best player.
Yeah, I think I can agree with both. I think a lot of people are definitely overlooking this roster, and I think it's just because there isn't that big name star next to Giannis anymore. It was like you had Dame, even when it was Chris and Drew, everyone would agree, like, okay, those are two all-star caliber players that fit to what Giannis needs. Well, now it's kind of like, yes, people like Myles Turner, but no, I don't think anyone's like thinking Myles Turner is this upper echelon type of player, and he'll turn out to be that, but I think the team, how it's constructed, has been better. But in terms of the weakness, I feel like I don't think we're going to be as negative as everyone thinks we're going to be, but what is if there is a weakness or the biggest weakness for this team?
Yeah, so I would say, I mentioned that this team seems to be really like prepared to be good in the regular season because of the depth and the fit. But I think once we get to the postseason, the problem is going to be not necessarily that we're missing a co-star, but just like general like creation and having like that, just some sort of like secondary guy or tertiary guy who can lean on to create. Because in the last couple of years, depth has been really trendy, I guess. Like OKC, Indiana, Cleveland, Boston, these teams with deep benches are the ones going far in the playoffs. But they all do have at least one other guy who they can lean on to get those shots off the dribble, to make plays for others in big moments consistently. And this team does not have that. And we simply just won't have that without a trade. Like, you can be bullish on KPJ or Kuzma, but they're not going to be that guy. And Myles Turner could definitely score 18 points a game, maybe even 20 in a bigger role. But he's not going to be that off the dribble guy. He's not. And so I do think that is a weakness that limits the ceiling of this team significantly. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be like a bad team. I just think like when it comes to the playoffs and like potentially a deeper run, that matters a lot.
Yeah, I'm again in similar boat, but I think what makes me nervous specifically as we talk about the playoffs is just like the crunch time offense, because obviously, like Finn said, a lot of these really good teams in the past couple of years, the conference finalists, the champions, the teams that lose in the finals, they've been deep and like really good all around and kind of have good role players all over the place. But it feels like, especially the more like the better the stars get in the NBA over the years, like the more it feels like those last couple possessions of games is like get the ball to your star and either clear it out for him or get him a ball screen and try to get him a switch and let him go. And obviously I trust Giannis to score the ball late in the game, but it's not that same kind of like where you give it the ball to Shea and he can either get all the way to the rim, step back for three, pull up for a mid-range jumper. And I think like Turner, like Finn said, could average like 20 plus points and have a total career year, but those aren't points that are probably going to be coming in like crunch time offense when teams really slow the game down and make you play half court offense and play against the set defense. So yeah, the shot creation from guys other than Giannis is a little bit what concerns me. And obviously when you have a guy like Giannis, you don't need like an all-world shot creator because a lot of it's probably going to be pick and roll and like getting easy looks because Giannis set a really good screen or they're like overcommitting to Giannis. It's going to be figuring out that pick and roll game with Giannis and being able to create a shot if needed. So it's not like, I don't think they need to go trade for one, like a top 10 player in the NBA to be a secondary guy next to Giannis. It's just what Finn said, like they don't have a guy that I trust to be a shot creator in the end of a playoff game at this point. Like guys can definitely take jumps in that from that standpoint and be better creators than we've seen in previous year, like last year. But I still like at this point, I don't see anyone where it's like, all right, I'm totally comfortable at the end of a playoff game, put 3 guys on the 3-point line, give this guy the ball, and let him play a 2-man game with Giannis. So that's my concern at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like we had such concerns on the offense come playoff time, and it was like, all right, you got Dame, problem solved. And then when Dame wasn't there, I was like, all right, what are we gonna do? And I think that is still like floating in the back of my mind, but I am wondering, did Doc fix their transition defense? Because that was god awful, and it was especially exposed against the Pacers. So for me, I think that's like the greatest weakness right now is, did they fix the transition defense, which got a little bit better when they had gotten Kuzma, but it was still bad. And I think that is still the one area where if Milwaukee can fix that, then the Bucks can defensively be solid, maybe even better than they have in years past. So that's just the part where I'm just worried about, is that was such a glaring weakness and just athleticism in general. I think they've addressed the athleticism side of it more by getting younger, having more, like, you don't have Dame and you don't have Brooke. So that right there improved it. But is that going to translate into transition? And now this is always one of my favorite questions, because when Riley, Adam, and I were doing this in the past, it was kind of like, all right, the Bucks are going to win, 50, 60 games. They're going to finish in like the top 3, whatever. And then the last couple of years, like, well, crap. Following the Bucks for years on end, it gets a little boring, but we always want to know, what do you hope to see from the Bucks during the regular season? I think it's going to be a lot different now because there is such a shift in the personnel and I guess the mindset. But for you guys, what do you hope to see from the Bucks during the regular season? What are you hoping that to do? So like for me, for example, last year, I was like, just beat the bad teams and do it convincingly. They didn't. But that was like my thing. I was like, I just want you to do that, because if I'm going to watch you guys for 80 something games, I want games where I can go and thinking, yeah, they're going to win, and then they do, and not have to sweat it out. But what about you, Drew? Like, what's something that you're hoping to see from the Bucks during this regular season?
I mean, beating a bad team is always good, but I think you could say that about any team in any season. That's what you want to see. So I'm trying to think of something a little bit more fun, but I think for me, just what I want to see, I just want to see the role. Like, obviously, we're talking about how we want some of these role guys to take a jump as creators. Like, obviously, that's going to be happening the whole year. Guys are going to be trying to mold into a new role and be more of shot creators, because that's something this team needs. But I want something that I'm really hoping for is I think we even saw with Kuzma, like when you're feeling like you need to play a certain role and you're trying to grow into that role, you don't want to dip in what you're already good at. Like, this is like exactly what happened to Kuzma. I felt like Kevin Porter Jr., we need more of this year because Dame's gone. Like, but we don't want him to stop like what he did last year. He was solid. Like, you don't want him to have a dip because he's trying to fit a new role more than he is just trying to be solid. So I think the role guys, that's a big thing for me, is like as they're all trying to come into their own and kind of fill a little bit of the Dame void and be more of shot creators, just because that's what we need on this current roster. Don't let the production and other things dip. Still be a good cutter, play defense, rebound, be solid. Like, still make your open catch and shoot threes when Giannis gets them to you, because they're going to be there with playing with Giannis. So still making sure you do all the little things. Well, like, there's going to be growing pains from guys, obviously, because they're trying to play bigger roles in the best league in the world. So there's going to be growing pains, but you want the growing pains to be because, oh, look, Kevin Porter Jr. is trying to be more of a creator out of the pick and roll as opposed to just looking to pass to Giannis, but he's still doing other things well. So that for me would be just the role guys. Obviously, they're all trying to make a leap, and we need that, and that's what I want to see as well. But don't dip in production with all the other things just because you're trying to do more shot creation.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So this for me is a bit of a loaded question that I think is best answered in the words of the great Mike Budenholzer, which is play random. And what I mean by that is that I just want to see this team be very fluid and free flowing, in a sense where, like, I want rotations to change all the time if dudes are outperforming other dudes. I want to see the schemes change, especially on defense, to like adjust to a matchup or adjust what you're seeing. I just want to see adjustments. Go with the flow. I want to see a lot of threes getting chucked up because we got a lot of shooters. I just want the guys to like have fun. And I want to see the kids play too, which is like Ryan Rollins, maybe even Ajax, Chris Livingston. I just want to see like the young guys play, and I just want to see this team be very fluid and just like fun. I feel like we have a younger team that is a different look than we've had in the last couple of years, and it has the opportunity to be maybe not like better than some of the years past teams. Actually, definitely not better, but just like different and potentially more fun. So I just want to see them play random.
Hey, playing random got them a title, so we can't completely
Absolutely.
disregard it. But in terms of a title, I guess it feels more like a long shot now than it's basically since Giannis had ascended at the start. But what does Milwaukee have to do to win a title or even be in contention for a title?
Yeah, my answer is just make a trade. I don't want to be negative, but like I don't think that this team as currently constructed is good enough to win a championship, even with leaps from other players. And you never want to count out a team with Giannis, but just looking at the teams that have won it or gone far in the past years, like with the Pacers, their second best player is Pascal Siakam, and that guy's one of like the 20 best players in the world. I mean, maybe like 25, but whatever. Like some of these teams are so good, and we talked about the creation, but like I don't know. I think this team could be a fun playoff team, but like they got to go get maybe it's just like Kobe White or Trey Murphy or someone like that, but we just need like a second star of some kind, and then I would feel a lot better about this team because I really like the foundation and the fit, but as currently constructed, I don't think this is a title team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know. I think there's a lot of basketball casuals out there who will say like, well, the Bucks have like the best player in the world. Like they could on a fluke maybe make a really really deep run. Like look at the Pacers, but then I'm like, well, then you don't watch enough basketball because like Finn said, like Pascal Siakam was like the second option, and he's like one at like top like perennial all-star, top 20, 25, 30, whatever you want to call it, player in the world. Like the Bucks just do not have that, and so there's obviously things could be going really, even if things are going really well near the trade deadline, like I still would like to see them make a trade because if things are going really well and you're playing for it, like you're in a good seating position, like you want to go for it. You don't want to just be like, oh, well, we'll kind of see in the offseason what becomes available. Because, like, this is Giannis's prime. You don't want to waste the year of the prime just because, like, obviously they don't have a ton of trade assets, and it'll be a little bit tough to facilitate a big-time trade that really makes you think that they can push it over the hump. But, yeah, I do want to see, like, play part of this. Like, don't make any trades right now because figure out – or well, even if something becomes available, make the trade right now. Like, that helps. But, like, you want to see what you're getting from these role guys so that you can see, like they're going to be in a bigger role before you make a trade than they are after, just because you're going to trade for one of the, like, a more 2 or 3 option guy. But see what you're getting from the role guys and then try to make a trade, because I think, like, as long as you've got Giannis, if you give him, and like Myles Turner's good, but he's not like a secondary creator. Like, if you gave Giannis a secondary creator next to Myles Turner, like, I would feel a lot better about it. And obviously it kind of sucks that injuries are such a big thing in the NBA right now, but like, you never know, like, who gets hurt. Like, maybe you get to play a team that's second best player is unfortunately hurt, and then that really opens it up. It opens the window more than you would have been expecting prior to the season. So yeah, I do, like Finn said, I want to see some more changes to the roster. We've had a bunch this summer, but there needs to be something else if they really want to feel like they maybe have a chance to push for a title. And at this point they don't, I don't think. So yeah, just seeing your roster change, but also just seeing a lot of progression from the young guys. So
something that I appreciate about John Horst is that he is not complacent, and he's always willing to make the big move, the big swing to, like, convince Giannis to stay, but also to, like, put this team in the to, like, optimize their chances for competing. And so at the trade deadline, like, I think a trade is totally in play. I think a September trade is never out of the question. Just look at Dame, and Drew Holiday was also in, like, September, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he'll be cooking something up.
I'm sure. Yeah, John Horst has always made a trade, so I'm sure he's going to do something, whether big or small. We'll figure it out. But we will have one last season thing to figure out, and that is, where do you think the Bucks will finish in the conference, and how things will turn out in the playoffs?
So I would say I think I see him falling in, like, the 5th seed, maybe like 4th seed, 6th seed, just like somewhere in that range. But my prediction, I'll just say 5th seed with the 4 teams above them being the Cavs, the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Magic. I do think that this team has a good chance to be really competitive in the regular season, especially if Giannis is able to stay healthy as he usually does. And so, yeah, regular season success totally in the cards. But then once we get to the playoffs, I think second round is probably the ceiling. Could be a first round exit, just depending on who they play. But like if we meet New York or Cleveland in the second round, I just don't really feel confident in us beating them in a 7-game series right now. So I think it could be a surprisingly fun regular season, but at least like trying to temper my expectations right now. I don't see a conference finals run really in the play.
I'm kind of feeling the same way.
Yeah, it sucks, but it's just kind of the reality.
Yeah, I'm kind of right in there too. Kind of in that 4-5 range. It'd be really nice to get that 4 seed so you can have home court in a first round playoff series. But like Finn said, I have Cleveland and New York kind of as the 2 teams. I think they've kind of put themselves at this point. I'd put them above everyone else with a little bit of a margin between. Then I think Orlando will be pretty good. Detroit's the team you want to that's. I think the goal should be Detroit. I think is going to be good. And I think people think they're going to be good, but I'm hoping the Bucks. That's the team I want them to stay ahead of, so that they stay in that 4-5 first round series, as opposed to having to go play 4 out of 7 games at a top 3 seed. But yeah, my realistic hope would be the second round, hoping that even if they don't get home court in that first round series, that it'd be probably the Magic, maybe it's Detroit or whoever it is. I think it should be someone that is beatable, but I think if they somehow escape and win that series, I think you're going to either play Cleveland or the Knicks. And just the way the roster is currently built, I don't see that being a series they win. You would maybe steal a game or 2 or whatever, just because maybe Giannis has some ridiculous playoff performance like we've seen before. But to do it 4 times, I don't see it happening with this current team. So I'd say somewhere between 4 and 6, like Finn said. But my prediction would be 5 at the moment.
Fair. Yeah. I'm still TBD on my answer for that, but hopefully I am hoping for a first round win. That at the very least, depending if they finish 4th or 7th, I just want them to win the first round in that aspect. But those are all of our predictions and stuff, and we will see down the road and in the future when we have Finn and Drew on, like everyone else, they will have their own particular segments that is going to be specific to them, as you've seen with Where in the World is Morgan Ross, Vans Warped Tour, Basketball Tales Down Under with Jack, Jackson's Built, etc. So we're gonna have that. So if they have it, they can go ahead and even tease it or talk about it. But if not, like I said, they will be on the podcast in the future, and you'll get to find out. So if either of you have a little teaser or one that you want to just start right off the bat, go for it.
Hey, if you're looking for something, I could do a little segment bench player, 2-way player of the, I don't know, week, month, I guess, however often, because for my personal blog, I do a lot of coverage of 2-way contract guys and the bench guys. So it's always something I'm thinking about. And I guess for this episode, the guy featured could be Pete Nance, just because we talked about him earlier. And then in the future, I could mention hey, you see this guy, the 14th man on Orlando? He's balling. But if you want it to be something not basketball, I'll get in the lab and cook something up. But
this is up to you. So it can be whatever you want.
Okay.
I was already going to say yours could be called Finn's Round Trip to highlight the 2-way players. But
yeah, hey, that would
I'll workshop it. We'll figure it out. We'll cook something up.
I'm a huge college basketball guy as well. I probably watch more college basketball than the NBA. I guess something that could work for me is specifically with obviously there's a lot of people that know a lot of the names, especially guys that are getting draft buzz from the high major programs, but I watch a lot of mid-major basketball too. So I guess that could be something fun, since the Bucks don't have really high draft picks in the coming years. Hey, here's this guy I watched. He played on Tuesday night in a gym that seats 800 people, but I don't know. He could be intriguing for the Bucks as an undrafted free agent. Maybe he could play on the summer league team next year. So something like that's possible. But I'll think on it too. Maybe I'll think of something outside of basketball. So
all right, Sickles Committee it is. Got it. For anyone that follows Sickles Committee, that was the first thing that came to my mind. It's following mid-majors, that seems like a sickos committee. So, yeah, like I said, when they are on in future episodes, they'll get to have their recurring segment. I will quickly do my film review. It's been a while since I've done a film review. It's going to be F1, the movie, starring Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, and basically, if you are a fan of F1, it just goes through a story of this old driver that's coming back, and he's with the young hotshot rookie. So your normal trope. But with this movie, it is very much you're here for the entertainment. You're not here for, sorry, my cat decided to join in. You're not here. The plot is not great. It's not like a deep plot. It's not the best writing you'll see. But if you want to be entertained for about 2.5 hours, F1 is a great option. Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack, so you know it's going to be great. The cinematography was amazing. It was like the same guys that did Top Gun Maverick, for example. So I would say go in whether you are a big Formula One fan or not. It's entertaining. I'll say that. Like, it's visually stunning. The sound is great. It's got a lot of racing action as well. So that was pretty cool. Would I say it's the most in-depth or like emotionally grabbing movie? No. Is it just cars driving fast for 2.5 hours? Yeah. If that's your thing. So I give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'd watch it again if it was on like a streaming service. I'm not going to pay money. However, if you can go see it in an IMAX, spend the money and do that, because seeing it in an IMAX is significantly better than seeing it in a regular theater. So I will give that tidbit. Spend the money and go to an IMAX if it's there. I think they did another round of it in IMAX, but otherwise, yeah, it's a good movie. Like I said, it's entertaining. It's cars driving fast, and it's for both people that are really into F1 and care about it, and those that are like, I don't know what F1 is, but this seems like an entertaining movie. It's entertaining, so I'll give it that. And I think it's in theaters now. But that's pretty much it, and that's all we have for this episode. So I appreciate Finn and Drew for being on. Drew, congrats, your first episode. Check. And Finn, your first, I would say, more official episode as well. You were here, but I feel like this is your true, like, all right, your first time into Dear Diaries.
Are you calling Jack's hosting unofficial?
I'm saying you guys were talking about Summer League. Like, I'm not counting. It's much like preseason basketball. I'm not counting it.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Yeah, no,
Jack did a great job at hosting.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
So we will continue with the season preview series. We're going to have more of the staff join on. We're going to have special guests, Jim Paschke, Lisa Byington, Gail Klappa is going to be back as well, along with the Locked On Bucks crew. And I'm going to see if I can get Adam and Riley to come back for one last time of a OG Dear Diaries episode. But we appreciate everything, and make sure to like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, share with your friends, and also make sure to follow us on brewhoop.com, where we will have some stories coming out. I mean, Morgan just put out an article to talk about how the reverse cam is fine, and I don't agree with it, but you should read it, and maybe you will agree. But we'll have more content like that. Ranking the roster is coming back soon, so that's going to be our big feature thing. And we will...